Welcome to this explainer. Today we're taking a really fascinating journey through time to look at something so incredibly common we literally never stop to think about where it came from. I'm talking about smoking. But hold on, we're not starting with modern habits or corner stores. We are going way, way back to uncover a deeply hardwired biological behavior. The premise we're exploring today is that the desire to inhale smoke actually isn't some invention of the modern world. It's an ancient, fundamental drive that predates civilization itself. So let's explore exactly how we went from a biological instinct to a massive global industry.
Okay, let's dive into this. I want you to picture this. You're standing around a fire. It's 50,000 BC. The sun just went down. There are no screens, no distractions, just you, the flames, and that thick, choking smoke curling directly into your face. Somewhere, at some point, one of our early ancestors looked at that smoke and thought, wait a minute, what if I did that on purpose? But to figure out when we actually started doing this intentionally, we first have to look at the very tool that makes smoke possible, which is fire.
Because, well, before we could smoke on purpose, we actually had to breathe it in by accident. And that started roughly 1 million years ago. At places like Wonderwork Cave in South Africa, our early ancestor Homo erectus controlled fire. They huddled around it for warmth, for safety, and by default, they inhaled campfire smoke every single day. But here's where the story takes a really wild turn. Some of that wood they were burning was mixed with psychoactive plants. When burned, these plants released chemical compounds that directly interacted with the human nervous system. See, our brains possess an endocannabinoid system. This is a biological network specifically tuned to receive these compounds. So our ancestors were accidentally getting high, and their brains were basically saying, hello, where have you been all my life? This was the very first accidental inhalation.
To truly grasp the massive scale of our history with smoke, just take a look at this timeline. 1 million years ago, we get controlled fire. But then, fast forward to just 12,000 years ago. In a hearth out in the Great Salt Lake Desert of Utah, archaeologists discovered wild tobacco seeds. And these weren't accidentally blown in by the wind. They were concentrated in a way that suggests deliberate placement, which pushes the timeline of intentional tobacco use back by thousands of years. And then, at the far end of our timeline, around 500 BC, we have direct physical evidence in the Pamir Mountains of Central Asia, where people were intentionally placing highly potent cannabis on superheated stones during burial rituals.
And this brilliantly illustrates the gap between written history and archaeological reality. Back in the 5th century BC, the ancient Greek historian Herodotus wrote about these nomadic people called the Scythians. He claimed they'd set up tents, throw hemp seeds onto glowing stones, and inhale the vapors, literally howling with pleasure. For centuries, people thought Herodotus was just making up a wild story. But modern archaeologists later excavated Scythian mounds and found the exact bronze braziers and hemp residue he described. It turns out he was reporting pure, unfiltered facts.
Section 1. The fourth biological drive.
So why did our ancestors keep doing this? Science suggests it wasn't just a modern addiction, but a core human instinct. Now, what's really interesting about this is Ronald Siegel's intoxication hypothesis. He was a psychopharmacologist who argued that the pursuit of altered consciousness isn't just an accident, it's fundamentally embedded in animal biology. It's not even just a human thing. Elephants will seek out fermented fruit. And incredibly, Siberian reindeer intentionally eat psychoactive mushrooms, and then, get this, other reindeer will literally drink their urine to recycle the intact psychoactive compounds. Seriously. If animals are going to those lengths to alter their consciousness, it tells us this is a deep, ancient biological urge.
Siegel actually categorizes intoxication right alongside our most basic survival needs: hunger, thirst, sex, and intoxication. To satisfy this fourth drive, early humans engaged in prehistoric trial and error. They threw different plants onto the fire just to see what would happen. And this was incredibly high stakes. I mean, sometimes a plant made you feel amazing, sometimes a plant was literally fatal. But the humans who survived remembered which was which. They passed that highly valuable, lived experience down to the next generation, establishing a foundation of plant knowledge long before written history even existed.
Section 2. Prescribing smoke for health.
Now, here is a wildly counterintuitive historical reality. Before smoke was recreational, the ancient world saw it primarily as medicine. Let's rapidly walk through these global therapeutic practices. First, you've got the Ebers Papyrus from 1550 BC showing ancient Egyptians inhaling smoke from heated herbs to treat throat and lung conditions. Second, Hippocrates, the father of modern medicine, wrote about ancient Greeks using therapeutic herbal vapors. And third, Indian Ayurvedic medicine, which dates back over 3,000 years, utilized dhumapana, or medicinal smoke drinking, through specific pipes for specific ailments. Now, inhaling smoke for lung health sounds absolutely insane to us today, but the logic was actually super sound for the time. The lungs are a highly effective delivery mechanism straight into the bloodstream.
It's the exact same logic we use today when a doctor prescribes an asthma inhaler or a nebulizer.
Section 3. Sacred Rituals and Social Trust.
Moving beyond just the individual body, smoke served a critical function for the whole group, acting as a really powerful social bonding agent. The ancient ritual smoke circle was not a party. It was critical infrastructure. We humans are deeply social animals, right? And in a highly dangerous prehistoric world, group cohesion meant survival. When a group of ancient people sat in an enclosed space together and shared an altered state of consciousness through smoke, it literally synchronized their neural activity. It created this profound sense of connection, mutual understanding, and deep social trust. This wasn't about just hanging out on a Friday night. It was about forging the necessary, unbreakable bonds that allowed a tribe to face a hostile world together and actually survive.
This brings us perfectly to the Americas, where for indigenous peoples, tobacco use, dating back at least 3,500 years, was profoundly sacred. It was utilized to communicate with the spirit world and to bind tribal agreements. The smoke itself was seen as a living messenger, carrying prayers upward. So the crucial point is, because it was sacred, it was treated with highly disciplined reverence. An indigenous shaman wasn't just taking a quick cigarette break outside, they were opening a divine channel. The whole idea of casual chain smoking was completely non-existent in these cultures.
And then, everything changed. We hit the pivotal year of 1492. Christopher Columbus arrives in the Caribbean, and his crew is utterly baffled to see indigenous men and women walking around with these glowing sticks of dried leaves, exhaling smoke. This exact moment marks the collision of the ancient, sacred tradition of the Americas with the Old World, and it triggers a massive, irreversible historical shift.
Section 4. The Modern Commercial Perversion. Let's move to the timeline and see how this builds, because this collision triggered a dramatic, really harsh shift from reverent ancient ritual to disastrous modern commercialization. Once tobacco hit Europe, the idea spread like wildfire. By the 1600s, it was a massive global trade commodity. By the 1700s, snorting powdered tobacco, or snuff, became the absolute height of aristocratic fashion. The 1800s saw the worldwide spread of the cigar. And then, in the 1900s, the invention of the industrially manufactured cigarette changed everything. Think about it. What took indigenous cultures thousands of years to refine as a highly measured, respectful practice was converted into an uncontrolled, mass-market European obsession in just a few short centuries. Based on the historical record laid out in our sources, 20th century industrialists suppressed their own internal evidence linking cigarettes to cancer. They launched marketing campaigns directed specifically at children. They purposely added chemical compounds to make nicotine hit the brain faster and harder, maximizing the addictive properties of the plant. The source material describes this process as taking an ancient ritualistic element and engineering it specifically to be as physically destructive and financially extractive as possible.
And this represents one of the largest moral chasms in human history. Look at the stark contrast here. On one side, you have a 500 BC shaman using smoke for a sacred, disciplined spiritual connection. On the other, a 1960s tobacco executive treating the exact same plant as a mass-market, financially extractive product. It is absolutely crucial to take away from this explainer that while both sides involve the exact same plant and the act of creating smoke, they share absolutely nothing else in common. The entire shebang, the intention, the respect, and the outcome has been completely inverted.
To wrap up our journey today, I really want you to reflect on this quote from our sources. There are these thin threads of continuity that run unbroken through 100,000 years of human experience. Despite the technology, the screens, and the massive modern industries that separate us from our ancestors, we're still connected to them through basic primal elements: fire, smoke, breath. The oldest humans sat in the dark, breathed in the smoky air, and eventually made a choice to alter their minds and bond with their tribes. It's like a giant puzzle connecting us back to the very beginning.
So, I want to leave you with a provocative thought. The next time you flip a light switch, or sit around a summer bonfire, or catch the faint smell of wood smoke on a really cold evening, ask yourself this: are you just breathing, or are you participating in humanity's oldest habit? It kind of changes the way you look at a simple campfire, doesn't it? Thank you for joining me for this explainer, and keep questioning the history behind the things we take for granted.